try to keep something between you and your target.
Fans around the world were captivated by his rugged lifestyle and survival skills. But many were left puzzled when he suddenly disappeared from the mountains he once called home. What led him to step away from the wilderness he had embraced for so long? Tom Oar wasn't just a character on television. He was a man who truly lived in the wild, in places so remote and unforgiving that most people wouldn't last even a week. For nearly 50 years, he lived far from modern society, embracing a life of self-reliance and solitude. But beneath his tough exterior and fierce independence lies a deeply emotional and heartbreaking story that few fans have ever heard. So, what really happened to Tom Oar? Is it a matter of declining health, or is there something even more mysterious at play? Stick with us until the end of this video to uncover the untold and shocking tragedy behind Tom Oar's departure. His story is far more than just a TV tale. It's a powerful, emotional journey. Before the world came to know Tom Oar as the grizzled mountain man and star of mountain men, long before cameras followed his every step through snow-covered forests, in rugged terrain, he was simply a man in pursuit of one thing: freedom. Though Tom wasn't born in the wilderness, something about the wild always called to him. It was as if he was meant for a life that defied the modern world. Even before the television spotlight, Tom was already living an unconventional life that most people would never even attempt. When mountain men started documenting his journey, viewers were introduced to a quiet legend, a man who lived raw, fearless, and entirely off the grid. He was a mountain man in every sense of the word, but behind that image was a story few knew, one filled with deep sacrifice, physical hardship, and a tragic twist that changed everything. To understand Tom's journey, we must go back to where it all began. He was born in 1943 in Rockford, Illinois, a small town where hard work was part of everyday life. His father, known as Chico Oar, had a unique and inspiring background. Chico was part of America's old Wild West shows in the 1880s and 1890s, and he also performed in the legendary 1920s bucking horse sale. This strong family connection to frontier life planted the seeds for Tom's fascination with rugged living and old-world skills. From a young age, rodeo was in his blood. By the time Tom reached adulthood, he was already riding wild horses in rodeo arenas across the country, competing as a professional bronc rider. But for Tom, it wasn't just a sport, it was a way of life. He loved the thrill, the bond with the animals, and the sheer challenge of pushing himself to ride harder and longer than anyone else. In the early 1960s, Tom made a name for himself in the rodeo circuit. As a member of the International Rodeo Association, he quickly rose through the ranks and became known as one of the top bronc riders in the country. Throughout the 1960s and 70s, he traveled coast to coast, competing and winning in some of the biggest events. He was fearless, committed, and respected for his quiet determination. But rodeo riding isn't without its dangers. The countless falls, crushing blows, and broken bones eventually began to take a toll on his body. Could never imagine, yet he kept going, bandaged, bruised, but never backing down. However, deep inside he knew this lifestyle couldn't last forever. His body was sending warnings, and he understood that every ride brought him closer to a point of no return. Then came the turning point, a moment that would change his life forever. It was Valentine's Day in 1970. At the age of 35, Tom was in the rodeo chute, sitting atop a powerful bull named Woolly Bugger. In that intense moment, he secured his hand in the bull rope, locking it in place as the chute burst open. Chaos erupted. In the blink of an eye, man and beast collided. Violently, Tom's skull slammed against the bull's, knocking him out cold. But the nightmare had just begun. His hand was still tied to the rope, leaving him trapped on the back of the bucking bull. Tom's body was tossed around like a rag, dolled, his legs and torso crushed beneath the bull's hind legs. For nearly 2 minutes, he endured a brutal beating, unable to escape. Nancy, his wife, watched helplessly from the stands as rescuers fought to free him. Eventually, they cut the rope and rushed him out of the arena on a stretcher. Tom remained unconscious for 3 hours. He had suffered a severe concussion and extensive bruising across his body. Strangely enough, the bull that nearly killed him also didn't survive. Woolly Bugger died 2 weeks later from a concussion. Despite the trauma, Tom did something almost unthinkable. Just a month later, he was back in the chute, ready to ride again. But deep down, he knew the truth. His glory days were behind him. He never quite regained the success he once had. Realization finally hit he had to quit. And so, after years of pain and perseverance, Tom decided to leave the rodeo life behind. By 1981, injuries had piled up, and the thrill of rodeo began to fade. Tom and Nancy made a life-altering decision. Walked away from everything they knew. It wasn't just a move. It was a total reset. They packed up their belongings and disappeared into the remote wilderness of northwestern Montana. Far from crowds, cities, and noise, they found themselves in the rugged lands near the Yaak Valley. The area was nearly untouched. No electricity. No running water, no stores, and brutal winters that dropped temperatures to 30 below zero. But that's exactly what Tom wanted. The thrill of rodeo had been replaced with a deeper longing for peace, for quiet, and for the kind of freedom only nature could offer. They started from scratch. Together, Tom and Nancy built a life with their own hands. They chopped wood for heat, hunted for food, and lived fully off the land. Tom tracked animals through the snow, set traps, and harvested pelts. Everything they had came from their own hard work. Tom became a master of traditional skills that had long been forgotten by the modern world. He tanned hides the old-fashioned way using smoke and simple hand tools, just as Native Americans had done for centuries. He turned those hides into clothing, shoes, and gear. Nothing went to waste. Every day brought new challenges, wild animals, broken tools, and the constant battle against freezing temperatures. But for Tom, this was paradise. He no longer needed the noise of the outside world. The crackling wood stove, the whisper of the forest, and the love of his wife were enough. He had finally found the life he was meant to live, raw, honest, and completely free. Before long, word began to spread about an old cowboy who lived a quiet life on a remote hillside, handcrafting leather goods the traditional way. Wasn't one to promote himself or chase attention. His quiet dedication spoke for itself. People were drawn to his work because it was authentic, pure, and unlike anything mass-produced. His way of life felt like a breath of fresh air in a world that often moved too fast. By his side every single day was Nancy, his loyal partner. The two of them made an incredible team, working in perfect rhythm. Nancy handled much of the daily work. She helped prepare animal hides, managed household chores, and supported Tom as his reputation as a skilled traditional craftsman steadily grew. Her role extended far beyond just help in the workshop. She farmed, sewed, and even stood guard against wild animals threatening their remote cabin. The connection between them was not flashy or for show. It was quiet, steady, and deeply rooted. You could see their bond in the way they moved together, often without even speaking. It's just a glance, a nod, and they understood each other completely. Eventually, that unique way of life caught the attention of the outside world. Though Tom had never set out to be on television, he'd never called a production company or asked for fame. Everything changed in 2012. That's when the producers of a new History Channel series called Mountain Men came searching for individuals who were still living by old school grid traditions. They weren't interested in actors or scripted stories. They wanted the real thing. And Tom's life lived far from modern conveniences and rooted in survival, craftsmanship, and quiet independence stood out. He had chosen to leave modernity behind and build a life in the heart of the wilderness. That kind of life was increasingly rare, and it made him a natural fit for the show. So what is Mountain Men all about? The series follows rugged individuals who've traded city comforts for the raw challenges of wilderness living. These are men and women who hunt their own food, build their own shelters, and live on nature's terms. Winters in the North American wilderness are brutal, but the people on the show embrace them. The cold, the isolation, and the dangers are real. From apex predators emerging in the spring to the long months of food scarcity after hibernation, survival demands constant vigilance. But there's something deeply fulfilling about the lifestyle. The satisfaction of relying solely on your own hands, instincts, and knowledge draws people to this way of life and to the show. Whether dealing with unpredictable snowstorms, fixing frozen engines, or enduring record low temperatures, these individuals meet nature's curveballs head-on. The show captures their resilience, creativity, and day-to-day problem-solving. Sometimes winter arrives early and unexpected, bringing Arctic blasts from Alaska to the Carolinas, leading to frostbite, broken equipment, and life-threatening conditions. Here, freedom doesn't come easy. It's earned through hard work, grit, and determination. From young newcomers to seasoned survivalists, everyone must prove they can stand up to the wilderness, and only the toughest will make it through. As the show says, may the best men live, despite being a deeply private man. Tom eventually agreed to take part in the series with one condition: everything filmed had to be real. No acting, no scripts, just life as he lived it. And viewers responded with enthusiasm. Watching Tom on Mountain Men was like stepping into another time. He wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. His skills in hunting, tanning hides, trapping animals, and tracking through the wilderness amazed viewers. But it wasn't just the techniques that made Tom a favorite, it was his spirit. He wasn't trying to impress anyone, which ironically made him all the more impressive. Soon, Tom became a household name among fans of the show. His calm demeanor, deep expertise, and unwavering lifestyle captivated audiences. People started recognizing him in nearby towns. Tourists traveled just to catch a glimpse of his homestead. Letters and emails flooded, and some fans shared personal stories about how Tom's way of life inspired them to make changes in their own lives. Others simply wanted his advice or sent thoughtful gifts. Although Tom remained modest and kind to every fan, the growing fame added a layer of pressure too. His once simple life, the quiet that once defined his existence, was getting harder to maintain. Financially, things also changed. Thanks to his appearances on the show and the sale of his handmade leather goods like moccasins and tanned clothing, Tom's net worth reportedly grew to around $200,000. It was a considerable sum for a man who once lived in total seclusion, disconnected from the modern economy. Yet, even with the fame and modest wealth, Tom stayed true to his roots. Still, there was no denying that time was catching up with him. The years of physical labor from rodeo days to mountain life had taken a toll on his body. Winters grew tougher. Each season added more aches and slower mornings. Though he never openly admitted it, it was clear Tom Oar was beginning to slow down. Then came a moment that would change everything. By the time Tom was in his 70s, he had already become a living legend, a man who had tamed the mountains and built a life where most couldn't last a week. But one winter day brought a tragic twist. Started like any other frigid morning in Montana. Snow had piled heavily on the roof of the cabin, something that often happened during the long season. Too much snow could cause serious structural damage, so Tom decided to clear it off. Nancy, always cautious, begged him to wait. She thought maybe the weather would ease, or perhaps someone younger could help later. But Tom never wanted to sit. Idle grabbed his ladder, put on his worn-out boots, and climbed up with his shovel. He had done this dozens of times before. But this time was different. Somewhere in those few moments, maybe the ladder slipped. Maybe the roof was slicker than expected, or maybe it simply gave out. Tom lost his balance. He fell hard onto the frozen ground, hitting his back and side. The impact was severe, and for a moment, he couldn't even move. It wasn't just a stumble, it was a fall that brought real fear. Nancy, hearing the sickening thud, rushed outside. She found Tom in pain, groaning, struggling to get up. Whatever the exact cause, the fall marked a turning point. A moment when even Tom had to confront the reality that he was not invincible. After a lifetime of living wild and free, nature had delivered a blow that couldn't be ignored. Tom Oar may have claimed he was fine, but Nancy knew better. She saw the pain in his eyes and the way his body moved. His ribs were badly bruised, his back was stiff, and his breathing was shallow. There was no ambulance in sight, and the hospital was far away, so Nancy took charge. She helped him inside their cabin, wrapped him in warm blankets, and kept a close watch over him. But as Tom rested, it became clear this wasn't just a minor injury. Something deeper had shifted. Within him, over the next several days, Tom struggled with basic tasks. Walking was painful, lifting firewood became nearly impossible, and everyday chores wore him down. He had always recovered quickly, but this time the pain lingered. More than that, the fall shook him emotionally. The same man who had faced down wild animals, battled fierce blizzards, and lived in the wilderness for decades was now afraid of heights even. Something as simple as climbing a ladder. Eventually, Tom agreed to see a doctor in a small clinic several towns away. Diagnosis was serious: cracked ribs and broken bones. He didn't need emergency surgery, but he did need rest and physical therapy. That kind of rest didn't come naturally to Tom. He wasn't used to sitting still. But when he returned home, something had changed. He moved slower, spoke less, and the fearless spirit he once carried seemed dimmed. For the first time, he quietly wondered if this injury might signal the end of his life in the wilderness. That was the hardest part, not just the physical toll, but the creeping realization that the life he had built over 40 years might finally be slipping away. As winter settled in, the memory of the fall lingered. Mountain life had always been tough, but now the danger felt more real than ever. What if it happened again? What if Nancy wasn't there to help next time? Living far from any neighbors or family, the risks became too big to ignore. Tom could no longer pretend he was invincible. He couldn't bear the thought of Nancy suffering because of him. She had always been strong and dependable, but she was aging too. She deserved comfort, warmth, and freedom from constant worry. For years, they had brushed aside the signs, the aching joints, long winters, and health scares. They told themselves it was just part of getting older. But deep down, they both knew they were pushing the edge. That's when the conversations began. Difficult ones. Honest ones. Maybe it was time to leave the mountains. It wasn't an easy decision for Tom. Montana had been his home for more than 4 decades. The wilderness gave him purpose and peace. But now, each snowfall felt threatening. Every task carried risk. Slowly, he began to accept a painful truth. It might be time to live a different life. Together, Tom and Nancy made the decision. After Season 9 of Mountain Men, fans began noticing his absence. He didn't announce his departure or give a farewell speech. He simply faded from the spotlight. Questions poured in. Was he sick? Where had he gone? The truth was, Tom had chosen to quietly recover and step away from public life. He and Nancy moved to Florida, a place with sunshine, safety, and proximity. To family, no more icy roofs or harsh winters. For Tom, it wasn't the end of adventure, it was a new chapter. Still, for viewers who had admired his wild, off-the-grid lifestyle, it felt like the end of an era. Tom had always represented a kind of strength and independence rarely seen anymore. Watching him leave the mountains felt like losing something real. But Tom didn't see it as giving up, understood that survival sometimes means knowing when to change. After the move, everything about life shifted. He slowed down, reduced physical work, and started stepping away from the identity that had defined him for years. His appearances on Mountain Men became fewer. Fans were left wondering what had happened behind the scenes. But Tom's life hadn't stopped. It had just changed course. He and Nancy packed up their home and left Montana, heading thousands of miles to Florida. It was a massive change for a man who had lived his entire adult life in the wilderness. But his body needed healing. After the fall, they couldn't risk another winter in the mountains. Leaving Montana was about more than comfort. It was about survival. Tom had given everything to the wilderness, but he finally recognized it could all be taken away in one bad moment. Fans were shocked. Tom had always stood for toughness and self-reliance. Florida didn't seem to fit that image. But even in a new place, Tom was still himself. The landscape had changed, but his spirit hadn't. What made the transition hardest wasn't just the change in weather, it was the change in rhythm. For decades, every day had a purpose. There was always something to do: trapping, hunting, preparing for the next storm. Florida life was slower. Tom still crafted knives and leather goods, but the sense of urgency was gone. That shift affected him deeply. He never complained, but those close to him saw it. He missed the challenge, the cold, the silence of the wilderness. He missed Montana's snow-covered trees and the distant howls of wolves. Florida had sunshine, but it lacked the soul of the mountains. Fame didn't make things easier. When mountain men became popular, Tom's once private life became very public. He never sought the spotlight, never cared for interviews, and didn't watch his own episodes. He just lived authentically. But with fame came attention. Fans showed up at his cabin. Letters flooded in. Strangers approached him in public. At first, it felt good to be appreciated, but eventually, it wore him down. He wasn't comfortable being treated like a celebrity. After the fall, the spotlight became even harder to bear. Rumors swirled. People assumed he left because of money issues or drama. But the truth was simpler, and sadder. Tom had come close to losing his life. He needed to recover and find peace. Nancy stood by him through it all. She had also left everything behind: her routines, her wilderness home. In Florida, she became his strength once again. She supported him through the emotional transition and reminded him of the small blessings. Mornings without pain, walks without ice. Together, they created new routines: crafting, visiting neighbors, attending fairs. But beneath the smiles, they both felt the absence of Montana. Tom had more time to think now. He often reflected on the life they had built. Early days as a rodeo rider, the first winters in the wild, the pride of surviving storms and tanning hides. He remembered how it felt when producers called asking to film his life. He remembered how the accident reminded him that everything can change in an instant. He had survived wild animals, bone-freezing cold, and dangerous injuries. But one fall, in familiar territory, had shaken him to the core. And now, in the quiet of Florida, those memories returned often. Still, Tom held no bitterness. He didn't live with regret. He often said, "I've lived a full life, more than most." And he meant it. Though he no longer climbed mountains or built log shelters, he never stopped being a mountain man. He still worked with his hands. He still passed down his knowledge. Occasionally, he still appeared on Mountain Men. Those who know him say, he lights up when he talks about the old days. He doesn't talk about fame. He talks about freedom, the mountains, the life he built with Nancy. Though the setting has changed, the wild still lives in him. So is Tom still alive? Yes, he is. Despite widespread rumors, including a fake obituary that circulated in 2020, Tom is still with us. That false report convinced many fans, especially since he had pulled back from the show. Around the same time, he faced a real health scare, an episode of severe breathing trouble that revealed heart weakness and fluid in his lungs. This added fuel to the fire, and many believed the worst. Then in 2024, the rumors came back. Some claimed Tom had died peacefully in Florida at age 81, but again, there was no confirmed source. Others reported that he was still alive, just living quietly in retirement. So, what's the truth? Is Tom Oar still alive? He's now about 82 years old, enjoying a quieter life out of the spotlight. While many reality stars chase more fame, Tom stepped away, not in defeat, but with wisdom. He now values health, family, and peace above all else. His body has taken a toll after decades in harsh conditions. The accident that led to his move wasn't just a physical injury, it was a warning. But mentally, Tom remains sharp. He continues to tell stories, teach traditional skills, and remind others of the old ways. And when asked about regrets, his answer is always the same: I don't regret a thing.